Assembly. I want to welcome you to our 141st season. 141 years we've been doing services right here, and you've been out here. We really appreciate you. How many of you are here for the first time? Well, welcome. And hope you enjoy yourself and receive some wonderful things here. And for those of you, welcome back home. We appreciate your continued patronage of LilyDale. I know you feel the good vibrations here. Otherwise, you wouldn't be braving all the things that are out there to come here. I am sure you're going to continue on supporting us, and we truly appreciate it. Okay, today's an interesting day. It's, I just keep thinking of 142 or 141? 141. I keep thinking 142. I think I was here before. But anyways, it's kind of special. I just really feel that all the different things over all the different sections, every decade, how it's different surprise. This decade is holding some definite surprises here, for us. This new environment that we're living into. I'm going to start off with our invocation, and then we're going to do a hymn, which is, I love to tell, what was it? I love to tell the story, right. That's a good one. And the words are going to be up there. And so I'm going to do our invocation. Please rise. Enter the Spirit of God, Creator, Sustainer, Source of all things so good and very good. We truly appreciate this beautiful day you have given us here in LilyDale. And may you bless both our speaker this afternoon and our message minister, that they may bring forth the highest, the best, the most understanding, wisdom, and truth that we truly desire for ourselves and for our loved ones, both here and in spirit. And may we also receive the messages that we know that we need to receive, that they may ring true and resonate throughout our being, the truth of our eternal being, that we are eternal as our loved ones in spirit are. And for this we say, thank you, God. Amen. So how great thou art, right? Oh, I love to tell the story. I don't know why I keep saying that. I must be tough today. Okay, love to tell the story. Let's do it. we ask that you turn them off during our service. We really appreciate it. I'm sure they'll be there when you come back out. I guess we have no excuses for missing messages. There's always something on there, it seems. Anyways, got to remember that. And you know who else likes to tell the story? Is our speaker this afternoon, the Reverend Ron Skorotsky. I have known Ron for so many years. I've heard so many of his talks. They've always been just inspiring. He's a personal friend of the Pope. He's an ordained spiritualist minister, which he was the youngest one ever ordained as a spiritualist minister back many, many years ago. What century was that, Ron? But anyways,
in a galaxy that time forgot.
In a galaxy time forgotten. But then he decided to become a reverend again, and he became a science of mind minister, which, again, when you combine the two, you get some wonderful things that come out. And Ron has been exploring religions and being very, very active as far as with LilyDale, not only chairing here, speaking here, being a medium here, working here too occasionally. And like I say, I just really enjoy having Ron here and being able to introduce him to you all. And if you haven't heard from Ron, you're going to be in for a treat, because I guarantee, in other words, you'll have to take him home to your mother and talk to her about it. So without any further ado, I want to introduce to you the Master, Ron Skorotsky.
I don't know if I can live up to that descriptive. It's funny. The hymn that we sang, for whatever reason, has, for all intents and purposes, virtually become my theme song, because I do indeed love to tell stories, and the stories I like to tell the most about or of is spiritual encounters, mediumistic encounters that have not only occurred here at LilyDale Assembly, but throughout the country and indeed throughout the world over the course of quite a bit of history. And I can remember a dear, dear friend of mine just recently said to me, he says, I've got a new title for you, and it's something that hopefully people will remember you by. And I said, okay, I'll bite. What is it? He said, well, you can be, because you tell so many stories, you could now become the Paul Harvey of modern spiritualism. And I said, well, I loved Paul Harvey when he was on the radio, and I still listen to repeats of it, because he's passed into spirit for quite a few years now. But why would I be like Paul Harvey? He says, well, because you're always running around telling the rest of the story. So, in any event, everybody loves a good story, and more often than not, people have their personal favorites. Like I mentioned before, while some folks would, love mysteries, and others romance, and of course my personal favorite, due to my intense interest, shall we say, and my involvement in metaphysics and in the study and interpretation of spiritual and psychic phenomena, love what I call true ghost stories. And many times over my, it's been about 45 years of my involvement with LilyDale Assembly, I have had many interesting subjective and in some cases objective phenomena that have occurred to me, or should I even say through me, and whether they be at a seance held in someone's home, or perhaps many times the phenomena that occurs at Inspiration Stump, and unfortunately not this year, but at excuse me, Forest Temple. And so in contemplating a little bit of that, I thought it's always important that with a good story, there should be a lesson, something you can take away and learn a higher teaching or a higher value. And so I want to share with you a couple of stories today that I hope will do just that for you. I'd like to, in a sense, introduce you to Stanley and Irene Kowalski. Now, Stanley and Irene were very normal people, very typical people, hard-working, good Polish-American stock, staunch Roman Catholics, and they happened to live across the street from my mother, Sophie, and my father, Walter, for many, many years in a beautiful Polish neighborhood on, yes, you guessed it, St. Stanislaus Street in Rochester, New York. St. Stanislaus, of course, being a very prominent and very popular Polish saint, unlike myself, of course. And over the years, and this was through my late adolescence, early teens, older teens, and even into my adulthood, when I first started getting interested in spiritualism, not just as a, I shouldn't say at that time, not as a religion, and not even so much as a philosophy, but interested in it as a phenomenon. I was reading what was the popular, I'll call it pulp of the day, Hans Holzer. If you don't know who Hans Holzer is, then by God, I am very much older than you are. But Hans Holzer would write books, and it would be a series of books. The Lively Ghosts of Ireland, The Lively Ghosts of Spain, The Lively Ghosts of the United States, right on. I think the only thing he didn't cover was the Lively Ghosts of Disney World. But reading that and getting interested, and I can remember during that period of time getting what would be from not so much Steve, who was a very much laid back, live and let live kind of fellow, but from his lovely wife Irene, a mountain of raspberries, a mountain of, yeah, what are you, crazy? Looking, this is hocus pocus. This is fantasy. This is a waste of your young life, and it'll never amount to a, shall we just, to be polite, call it a hill of beans, though I assure you beans was not the word she used as a descriptive. And I, of course, being taught by my parents to be respectful of my elders, made very little commentary, very little rebellion against their critiques, because I knew that in this day and age, which is kind of ironic since spiritualism began in 1848, but as we've progressed on into being able to send rockets to the moon, being able to run your house and everything else via a small thing called a cell phone, we still are terrified of the question that Job asked in the Old Testament, if a man dies, does he live again? And anybody that comes forth and says, yes, there is no death, there are no dead, we have the proof. And those people are first ridiculed, then they are shunned, and in worst case scenarios, they can even be ostracized to the point of destroying careers and lives and so forth. But in any event, I took it, and took it well. And then came a time when Steve, it is after his retirement, number of years, he and his wife went to a wedding ceremony. And afterward, they attended the reception, and they were on the dance floor. Steve was a consummate dancer. I wouldn't compare him to Fred Astaire, but maybe his kid brother, I don't know. But Steve was a consummate dancer, and of course, his wife, being his life partner for over, I believe, 50-some years, was his perfect partner on the dance floor as well. And as the story goes, they were on the dance floor, and they were spinning around, and I do mean spinning. And Irene relates to me later after the fact that all of a sudden Steve pulled back, and a tremendous smile went across his face, and then he fell back, and she caught him. And as she caught him, she related to me that Steve literally, I say this, literally became as light as a feather. He had no weight that she could perceive. So she gently pulled him back to the pulled him down to the floor, and within a matter of moments, Steve was gone. He had gone into the next great stage of our spiritual growth and development, what we call the spirit side of life. Of course, there was a funeral, and Irene went into a state of extreme mourning, as one would expect for a very reasonable period of time. But a number of months after Steve's passing, she would come up to me and she said, "Can I talk to you?" I said, "Irene, no one could ever say you suffer from suppressed emotion or suppressed opinion. I don't think I could stop you from talking to me, so please, talk away." And we had that kind of a banter between us. And so what she did was she related to me. She says, "You're going to think I'm absolutely crazy, and don't tell your mother I'm talking to you, because she'll laugh at me." I said, "No problem." She said, "You know, not that many weeks after Steve's passing, I had this dream, and it was so much more than a dream. So much more than a dream. It felt so much a reality that it felt more real than what we're experiencing between us right here, the conversation we're having." I said, "Please, go on." And she did. She said, "I dreamt that I was seated on a grassy knoll, and all of a sudden, over the hill, came my beloved Steve. And he came down the knoll and met her warmly and embraced her. And she said, but it didn't look like Steve." I go, "What do you mean?" She said, "Well, Steve was as bald as a billiard ball at the time of his transition. But here he was in the prime of his life, 35 to 45. He was fit and trim and strong and vibrant, and he had a full head of hair." I said, "Well, it's my understanding through my study of spiritualism, and indeed through studying ancient spiritualism, that the spirit body, the true body, the body that is indestructible, will demonstrate itself in the spirit side of life as whole, perfect, and complete for that which is the reality of it, what it truly is. So that which was so what is separated is the incorruptible from the corruptible, that which we have left behind, the physical." She said, "The other thing is he expressed to me his deep love and appreciation for me, and he said that he would wait for me. He would wait for me, and not to worry, that he would always be with me, always guiding, always supporting." She said, "I woke up in tears, but they were tears of joy, not tears of suffering and pain." I said, "That is one of the most beautiful stories that I've ever heard. For it says in the scripture, and I believe it as sure as I stand here, that your old men will dream dreams and your young men shall see visions." And for her, as she was indeed in her dotage, she did receive the blessed of all dreams, the assurance that her loved one was not dead, was not gone, but that would be with her and would meet her at her appointed time when she made her transition into the spirit side of life. So I thought that was the end of the conversation. She said, "No, not so fast." I said, "Okay, what else is going on?" She says, "I don't know what to make of this, but in the morning, early in the morning, I smell cigar smoke." I said, "Well, I know she lived with her son at the same time that they had their son living with them. She says, does he smoke cigars ever in the house?" She goes, "Never. In fact, Irene would never, ever let Steve smoke his cigars. Nasty things, for God's sakes. He did not buy Cuban cigars. He bought, 10 for $1 cigars. Need I say more?" So he wasn't allowed those stinky cigars in the house. But the one time he did get away with it was early in the morning. He'd go have his cigar, probably, come into the house after he'd had it, and he would go and have coffee. He'd make the coffee because she had not retired before he did. He was retired before she had. That's what I'm saying. She says, so now I'm smelling cigar smoke passing by my bedroom. And it's ever so there, but not there at the same time. And I know it's a cigar. And then I smell coffee brewing. Fresh brewed coffee. And as quickly as I sense it, it disappears. No cigars in the house. No coffee brewing. Not in the literal sense. I said, this is Steve's way of letting you know exactly what he shared in the dream. That he is with you. That he is trying to give you a sense of normalcy and balance, and to give you the calm, sweet assurance again that he is not dead. He is more alive now than ever before, and as a result of that, take not only comfort, but proclaim within yourself and to those who have ears to hear you the great joy. Again, in this lesson, to take away from this story, there is no death, there are no dead. And if we would open our hearts and our minds and allow and accept, each and every one of us will receive that blessed assurance at some time in their lifetime. It is my contention that if you have it occur once in your entire lifetime, in the way that Irene experienced it, you will be the blessed of the blessed. And that is the rest of that story. The other story I want to share with you is a little bit different because it's not based in psychic phenomena. It's based in something that I think is extremely important as a lesson, but I want to again give you this backstory in order to help you remember it, and remember it not just in your minds, but hopefully in your hearts as well. About 4 years ago, I had the opportunity, and I believe it was spiritually guided. And remember, if you study metaphysics, you will note something called synchronicity. There are no coincidences. There are no accidents. Everything, and I mean everything, is in divine order through divine guidance. And if you can embrace that, affirm it, and strive to live it, you'll be amazed how you'll be able to identify that synchronicity, that guidance. But about 4 years ago, I met a lovely lady by the name of Bonnie Barker. And Bonnie was the daughter of a very dear friend that I'm going to speak of in a minute. And Bonnie was very, very ill. She had suffered from a tremendous brain cancer, I do believe, if memory serves me. And I wasn't supposed to be in LilyDale that day, but as luck would have it, I ended up being right here outside the, what we used to call the cafeteria, which is now called the Bauhaus. And I met Bonnie and her lovely family and my dear friend. And it proceeded, it catalyzed a relationship whereby in a very short time I was able to hopefully be a good minister to Bonnie and her family, and subsequently I was given the honor of presiding at her funeral service. But shortly after, I began to get closer and closer to Bonnie's mom, Marjorie Alessi. Marjorie had been coming to LilyDale for many, many years. In fact, I didn't know it at the time, but Marjorie knew my mother-in-law, the late Betty Schultz. They were teenage girls that worked at the cafeteria and frolicked as teenagers tend to frolic. I think back in those days you frolicked. Now I don't even want to think of what you do. But you're frolicking on the beachfront here. And Subsequently, in spite of the fact that Marjorie was a good card-carrying Episcopalian, I believe, she has continued to come to LilyDale and bring her family and enjoy the blessed revelations that she received here from the Spirit side of life. And what had occurred, in fact, it's kind of ironic, but this August 1st, this coming Saturday, is the anniversary of her birth. And she passed away on November 11th, 2019, and it's important you remember that for the moment anyway. But she had gotten to know my wife, Cecila, who has been up until this year the kind of ex officio librarian / information officer at the Marion Skidmore Library. And they had begun to evolve a very, very deep love and friendship, to the point where I really believe that my wife became another daughter to Marjorie. But Marjorie, as we got to know each other more deeply, other than just previous to 45 years ago, I began to realize that she was categorically, without any question in my own mentality, one of the most decent, loving, giving, caring people I think I've had the privilege of knowing. And she was not a person who, you've heard that old expression, if you don't believe in something, you'll fall for anything. She knew her mind, and she knew it well. I am an amateur theologian. Marjorie was not an amateur. Marjorie was extremely self-taught and self-avowed student of theology, philosophy, religion. And as time wore on, she began to become, in many, many ways, virtually an inspiration to me. I used to call her, and still do, my muse, because she would send me in the mail. She's one of the few wonderful people who still wrote letters and so forth. She would send me in the mail articles on spirituality and theology, little notes, on Post-it notes and so forth. And many, many times, they became the inspiration for a Sunday address or a meditation I was doing. And so she knew that I considered her a muse. And many times, very, very amusing. She had a ribald sense of humor. But in that relationship where we shared deep theological and philosophical discussions and were able to establish the kind of familiarity and friendship, not just of two friends, but in a sense, virtually two colleagues, I began to realize one extremely important thing that did disturb me. It literally disturbed my heart, because it happened if something happens more than 3 times, get disturbed. 1 to 3, you can kind of shrug it off and say, But after 3 times, if it's something that bothers you, take a look at it. And I thought to myself after this happened was that more often than not, and don't misunderstand, she did lead a very challenging life at times. She did lead a very dynamic, as I mentioned earlier, life as well. But it was always, always at the end of the day full of deep devotion to family, deep love of humanity, and a deep commitment to making this world a better place than how she found it. But here's what used to bother me. When we would have discussions and I would say something like, well, God bless you, she would say, I sincerely hope he does. It occurred to me after 2 or 3 times of this that on some level, perhaps as a young child, perhaps as an older adolescent and into her early adulthood, she had listened to the old theology and somehow it had marinated itself into the fiber of her being. And on some level, she still did not believe she was worthy of the love of God. And we would have these discussions, and I would tell her, you know, Scripture says God is love, and those who choose to love will certainly know God. She acknowledged that. She knew it intellectually. But in her heart, she always questioned whether she was good enough, worthy enough. To one time, I wanted to say to her, I said, listen, when you make your transition into the spirit side of life, the first person you're going to probably run into is Jesus of Nazareth, and he's probably the first question he's going to ask you is, what the heck was wrong with you? Lo, I am with you always, even unto the end of time. I believe that as sure as I'm standing here, that the infinite, living, loving presence was always with her, guiding her, upholding her, and sustaining her. But the one thing that, again, bothered me was her inability to fully allow it, embrace it, accept it. Well, on November 11th, she did make, indeed, of 2019, she made her transition. But before she made that transition, and it was a privilege, it was a true privilege, to be able to be with her a few times, to hopefully pray with her, to anoint her, to comfort her. And I finally asked her, I said, now, do you finally believe that you are God's beautiful girl in whom God is well pleased? And knowing her, because she wouldn't do it any other way, she said, well, I guess so. If you say so. So I said, yes, I say so. And in that blessed moment, in that beautiful moment, she convinced me that she did get it. She did get it before she made that final exit into the group and took her place in that place not made of human hands. And even as I was, again, honored to preside at her funeral service, I still carry that with me as my greatest and deepest comfort. But it goes back to, and here's the lesson, the principle that modern spiritualism has taught since 1848, does so to the present time, and continues to do combat, spiritual combat, with the idea that somehow we are not worthy, somehow we are not supposed to be loved, somehow we are less than. And the principle is that the door to reformation is never closed against any soul here or hereafter. Let me say it again. The door to reformation is never closed against any soul here or hereafter. To paraphrase, every moment, every nanosecond is a new beginning. And that is that if God is love, absolute love without condition, without critique, without judgment, without condemnation, that we, as its infinite expression, its word made flesh, that each and every one of us be embraced by our true nature, our true divine heritage, that we, every single one of us, are the beloved of God, always have been, are now, ever shall be. And I think that that is an important lesson, because we don't want to raise future generations believing that we are separate from God. We don't want to raise future generations believing that we are separated from each other. One of the things that this pandemic, I do believe, is teaching us is our spiritual interconnectedness, and that we must acknowledge this, allow it, accept it, and let it embrace us, so that we may become strengthened and strengthen future generations to evolve into that which we have always been destined to become, God manifest as humanity, as all that there is. So I thank Marjorie Alessi for teaching me and helping me teach others that lesson. And that again is, in this second vignette, the rest of the story. Now, I don't want you just to remember these two stories as something perhaps interesting or even thought-provoking. I would encourage you to give it deep thought. I would invite you not only to give it deep thought, but to strive to make it part and parcel of your day-to-day life, your day-to-day prayer, your affirmations, your meditations, so that we may all enjoy and learn from these valuable lessons. Be at peace.
Thank you very much, Ron. Yeah. Doesn't he love to tell a story? Oh, he didn't at least bring a rubber chicken up here today. Okay. Quick going over what's going to be happening here today. There's going to be a message service at the Forest. Inspiration stuff. Boy, I tell you. Inspiration. I know. I was paying attention. Inspiration stop at 4 p.m. Well, you're the only new person here, so make sure you take a walk out there. You're going to really love it. It's really a special place to go. They've been giving messages out there for over 100 years, and you all know where it is. You've been out there most likely before. If you haven't, it's time for you to go out there. We also have our few things you can go do here. We have our cafeteria right here, the powerhouse back here, and we have the pagoda. You can get ice cream, such there. Our bookstore and gift shop is open here in LilyDale, along with the bargain shop, which is up at the other end of LilyDale. Again, we appreciate you coming in and supporting our rather limited program this year. But just coming on the grounds of LilyDale, I've been here for, 34 years. And I really couldn't wait to get back from Florida to be here. Anyways, that's what it is. Now, I'm going to introduce you to our speaker, and then we're going to do, you know what, let's do the song first, and then I'm going to introduce you to our speaker.
We've already introduced them to the speaker.
No, I mean to our message.
Unless they want two sermons in one afternoon.
No, she's going to give you messages here. She's going to be doing messages. Now today we're going to do what you're not going to see it on the board, but I know you all know it. And it's a word called "He's got the whole world in his hands." But we're going to change the words. It's going to be "She's got the whole world in her hands." So I think that's going to be kind of neat there to do that. So we're going to recognize our feminine energy up here, and they are wonderful organists. Tell you all the way with various
because
words.
you don't have the words. The first verse, he's got the whole world, or she. She's got the whole world. The second verse, she's got you and me, brother. She's got you and me, sister. The third verse, she's got my soul and my body.
So I think let's just stand, stretch our legs, and we should know this song, I'm sure. Sister. minister this afternoon, Susan Barnes, actually Dr. Susan Barnes. She is a communication professor, medium, and spiritual artist. She is a certificate holder from the Spiritual National Union and tutors weekly mediumship classes. And she is also the host of the Spiritual Support with Dr. Seuss. She's got her own program there on Transformation Talk Radio. Her work has been featured in Psychic News, Psychic Observer, on radio shows and television programs. In addition, she is the curator of the Spirit Art Museum here in Cassadaga, New York, and she has authored 8 books, including Visual Communication, Branding is Communication, and Spiritual Basics. So let's give our message minister, Dr. Susan Barnes, a wonderful LilyDale welcome. Barnes?
And I have to say, it's a pleasure to be on the platform today again. And I have to say, the room is filled. You know, it's like there's all these empty chairs here, but they're not really empty. I'm feeling all of this energy around us. And I was picking up different things, and I don't know why, I was getting a lot of energy from teachers and instructors and people in your lives who've given you words of advice and wisdom. So if you had a favorite teacher, just know that that person was here today to try to encourage you and inspire you. Now, let's see what we can do here. I'm going to go around the room this way. So, may I come to you?
Yes.
Yes. I did with you, I did feel that education was very important to this person. And I did feel that there was a gentleman, I'm feeling a gentleman around you. I'm feeling a gentleman who was very bright, was very sharp. And sometimes he may not have been as emotionally available to people because he was more on an intellectual and thinking level. But he used his thinking, and through that thinking was how he tried to relate to people and do good things for people. And he'd like to tell you words of wisdom, and I say wise things or wise sayings. And he thought that if he could teach people some of these ideas, that they would be better off within their lives. So he was a very warm gentleman. Although he may have been a bit intellectual at times, and maybe some people thought he was cold, he was actually a very warm inside his heart and a very caring person. And he's here because he's telling me that he's saying you are caring also. And he's saying that there are people now in your life that you are trying to teach and instruct. And I don't mean in a teacher kind of way, but I mean that you're trying to guide. That word is guide. He's saying that you're now trying to guide others, and just know that his wisdom is there. It's not only inside you, but it's also around and about you to help you find the words that you need to find. So I'll leave that with you. God bless you. Come to the gentleman here. No, it's interesting. I was getting a gentleman with you also. Now, the funny thing is he was showing me in a suit, but I don't think he wore a suit very often. It was almost like they dressed him in a suit for his funeral, but that wasn't how he normally looked, if that makes sense to you. Yeah, and he was showing me a tie. It was a tie. It was definitely a 50s tie, because it was like a navy blue tie with a red spots pattern on it. But he came and he said, yes, I feel that he's doing that because I feel that people were trying to push him in certain directions sometimes, and he was much more of a free thinker. He was much more followed his own path, his own drum, and people were always trying to get him to conform a little bit. But I feel he felt much more comfortable in casual types of dress and casual types of clothes. I've got a sense too, it might have been on your father's side of the family, because I was getting your father's side, and he's coming to tell you that yes, it's okay not to follow what everybody else does. It's okay to have your own thoughts and your own ideas about things, and even if nobody agrees with you, your thoughts are valid and worthy and your thoughts, and that's what makes you who you are. So I feel with him that although they tried to conform him even towards when he died, that during his life he tried to live it the way he felt and believed and was truly a free spirit in many ways. So he's telling you also be a free spirit. And I'll leave that with you. God bless you. I'm getting a woman here. I'm getting a woman, and she feels like a grandmother type of woman. But again, okay, she's feeling like she's coming from your father's side of the family rather than your mother's side. And I'm feeling that you had a relationship with her when she was alive. Yes. And I'm feeling that in many ways she was the grandmother, your image of the perfect grandmother for her, and she would do those grandmotherly things. And I hate to say people cooked or whatever, no. She's just felt like she's telling me it was her love, that's what it was. It was the way she loved and cared for you is what made her really feel like your grandmother. And I feel that there were times maybe when she had to or took care of you when your parents might have been away, or you might have gone to visit her at times. But she's just telling me that yes, that the time she spent with you was the time that was very important to her. And she's giving me a feeling that she lived in a place where there was a lot of outdoors. I mean, there was a lot of room around it. She's even showing me like fruit bushes, like raspberry bushes and things, so that it was. And she's giving me the memories. I used to pick raspberries with my grandmother, and we used to then bring them back into the house. And I don't know if we made pies or not, but we certainly eat the raspberries. And so that's just a thought she's giving me. And she's telling you that, yes, that get out in nature. She knows that sometimes you don't like to be indoors, as she's saying. You need to get outside and feel the breeze and feel the air and let the air blow through your hair. And she's saying that when you get out and do that, remember her. Remember her, because she also loved the outdoors. And I feel she was good with plants and things as well. Or plants would grow around her. She had a lot of plants around her. So anyway, she just wants to give you her love and say, enjoy the outdoors. Take a walk in the woods. God bless you. Hi, how are you? With you, I definitely have a grandmother, but I'm feeling it more on your mother's side of the family. And I'm feeling that this was a woman who was very happy and very cheerful. Because I feel that your smile is similar to her smile. And that when I was sitting here seeing you smiling, I just was getting this big happy face that I could see. And I feel jolly. She's telling me the word jolly. And I feel maybe she was a little bigger than she might have wanted to be, size-wise. Not that she was fat, but just a little firm type of person. Solid, that's the word I want. She was solid. And I do feel she liked to cook. I feel she was someone, but she also liked to eat it. Yeah, so I think she would make some pastries and things, and so for all the ones that she made for other people, she'd do a little sampling there, here and there, which is why she couldn't keep her weight down as much as she'd like to. But it gave her great joy, and she telling me she had to test it. She had to make sure that it tasted right for other people, or she couldn't give it to them. So she's this very sweet woman and very kind woman, and I feel she lived to a fairly good age, and I feel she wasn't too sick before she passed, that the passing us fairly easy, and that she is greatly missed by everyone, but still remembered. I feel people are still talking about the things she baked and cooked. And some people may even try to do the recipes, but they're not quite as good. Not quite as good. But I leave you with her love and her memories and her thoughts. God bless you. Yes. Hi, how are you? How are you? I'm getting someone father's side of the family. I'm not sure if your father hasn't passed, then it's your father's father. Is your father in spirit? No, I didn't think so. I was going to say your father's father. I feel that he was more of a business type of man. Yeah, that he was very specific about things. Very, knew what he wanted, very direct, very meticulous in some ways about how he liked things, like how he dressed. I feel like he had the same kind of general dress he used to wear. He used to wear the same kind of things. And then he also, I'm feeling that he was a man that really liked more like meat and potatoes, kind of plain types of meals. And it wasn't the type to go to fancy Italian restaurants or anything like that. He liked more American, basic, plain cooking. I also feel that he did have a medical condition as well. I'm feeling that the condition has something relating to food, but that's what they're just telling me. He's here because he's saying that you too are sometimes very particular about the things you like. Problem, yeah. Well, he's saying that, yeah, that you picked up a little bit of that. She's saying you're not as bad as he was, but that you picked up a little bit of that. And he's saying sometimes you have to remember that things aren't always the way we want them to be. That we have to be open at times to accept differences and different ideas and different people. And he's saying that because I do feel that there's some people that are going to come into your life that aren't typically the type of people you hang out with. So he's just saying that when you meet new people, just keep an open mind. Just keep an open mind about them, and they will reveal themselves to you. And I'll leave that with you. God bless you. Ellen.
Yes.
Ellen, I have to tell you, when I was sitting here, I kept getting the image of a woman, and it was a woman who survived the Holocaust.
Lots of people survived the Holocaust.
Pardon?
Lots of people survived the
I
Holocaust.
know lots of people did, but this is a woman, I feel, you might not have known her real well, but I feel it's a woman that you met or interviewed at some time, and it's a woman who, because of that situation, she did have a physical problem, whether walking or something. So she had a physical slight disability, not a major one, but a slight disability of discomfort. But the message she was telling me was that she was saying that with your work, it was so important that you make people aware of so many things that some people want to forget. Things like the Holocaust is something people want to forget. But that is something we need to know it did happen, and it could happen again, but we don't want it to. So she was just here to really give you support and say thank you. Thank you for doing the work you do, for making us aware of things we need to know about, even if they're things we don't want to know about, is what she was saying. And I don't know, I just feel she's someone that you met, and it might come to you later because you may have thought about her a little bit, but I don't feel she's someone you knew that well. But she did appreciate what you were doing, and I do feel that she's somebody you may have interviewed or gotten to know that way. And she's saying thank you for all the work that you do. And now she's saying thank you for the work you're doing with spiritualism. She's saying that she knows that spiritualism is not the background that she or you came from, but the work you're doing of letting people know that there is a continuation of life is so, so important, especially in these times when people are fearful. So she's just saying, go get up. Go get up. Yeah, and I'm sorry I couldn't do the rest of the room. Thank you all. God bless you.
And I thank you, Susan. And I thank you for being here this afternoon. We appreciate your support again for coming here. I make one announcement also that we have this auditorium, which is to me a very special place. Again, I always like to think of it there. If you think about it, you're sitting here where people sat for 100 years ago, listening to somebody say something or bringing a message or bringing forth a lesson. And if it wasn't for this wonderful place, it's just a unique structure. It's not the Taj Mahal or anything, but it's really a special place. And it takes a little bit of maintenance to do to keep this place up. So if on your way out you decide you want to contribute, and anything that you contribute is strictly for the maintenance and the preservation of this wonderful building, we would appreciate it. And again, if you feel so moved, we again say thank you. Please rise for our benediction, and we're going to be singing the peace song right afterwards on our way out. Infinite Spirit of God, source of all good and very good, and all things excellent. Truly, again, we thank you for the messages we received here today and the words we received from our speaker this afternoon, that we may acknowledge the truth of the reality of our lives being eternal and infinite, and that we, as well as our loved ones, shall know and understand and feel the love, understanding, and wisdom that truly, God truly wants us to have. All we need to do is open our eyes to it, and we thank you for this opportunity to truly open our eyes that we may see the truth that truly is in you and me. And for this we say, thank you, God.